My son locked me outside. In the rain then. A millionaire appeared and said, "Destroy them all." The storm didn't scare me, my son's voice did. On my son's 35th birthday, I stood on his front porch while a thunderstorm tried to peel the world apart. Rain came down in sheets so thick it felt like the air had turned to water. Wind slammed into my chest, cold and sharp, and the porch lights flickered like they couldn't decide whether to witness this or not. Behind the glass door, the mansion glowed. Warmth, laughter, music, the clink of expensive glasses. People dressed like they belonged in a magazine, celebrating a life I helped build. I pressed my palm to the door anyway. The glass was cool, indifferent. "Nathan," I called, voice trembling. Not from cold, but from something deeper. "Please, just open the door." I saw movement inside shadows, crossing the foyer. Someone's heels clicked across marble. But no one rushed. No one acted like there was an older man outside in a storm. Then I heard it, the lock clicking again. Not a mistake, not an accident, a decision. I tried to breathe, but my chest felt too tight. My hands shook, wet and numb. I turned my head and looked through the narrow side window. There he was, my son, smiling near the fireplace with a drink in his hand, surrounded by people who looked like they'd never missed a meal. A year ago, he begged me to move in. He said he wanted to take care of me. Tonight, he had locked me out like I was trash. And the worst part was, the party didn't even pause. The kind of love I gave him was the kind that empties you out. My name is Caleb Mercer. I'm 62 years old, and I spent 31 years working at a plastics plant outside Cleveland. It was honest labor, loud machines, hot air, long shifts, sore backs. The kind of work that doesn't earn applause but keeps the world running. I've been a widower for 30 years. My wife, Diane, died of cancer when our son Nathan was 8. She went fast. One month she was laughing in the kitchen, teasing me about how I always oversalted the soup. The next month I was standing by her bed, holding her hand as it cooled, promising her I'd do right by our boy. After the funeral, it was just me and Nathan. I didn't have time to fall apart. I worked doubles at the plant. I did handyman jobs on weekends, fixing fences, patching roofs, unclogging drains. I missed things fathers shouldn't miss. School events, baseball games, the small moments that build a relationship. But I told myself it was temporary. I told myself he'd understand when he was older. Nathan was brighter than me. He had Diane's eyes and my stubborn jaw. He asked questions that made teachers smile. He saw patterns, connections, possibilities. And every time I looked at him, I thought, he's going to have a better life. So I kept sacrificing, quietly, because that's what I believed love was. Give, 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 until there's nothing left but a man shaped like an empty chair. I didn't know that teaching my son to receive endlessly might teach him something else, too. I sold my home so he could buy his future, and I called it fatherhood. Diane and I bought a small 2-bedroom house when we were young and dumb and sure the future would be gentle. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. It held Christmas mornings, scraped knees, and Diane humming while she folded laundry. When Nathan got accepted into a top business program in Chicago, I opened the tuition letter and felt my stomach drop. The numbers didn't just look big, they looked impossible. Nathan tried to act brave. "It's okay, Dad," he said. "I can take loans." I shook my head. "No, you're not starting your life buried." So I sold the house. I sold the only piece of stability I had left, the one place Diane still felt real to me. I moved into a cramped apartment and handed the entire sale to Nathan's education, tuition, housing, books, fees. It came out to about $180,000 over 4 years. Every cent. I told myself it was worth it because I pictured Nathan walking into boardrooms instead of factories, wearing suits instead of steel-toe boots. I pictured him living a life where emergency didn't mean choose between rent and medicine, and he succeeded. Nathan graduated with honors, landed a job with a Chicago firm, climbed fast. By 35, he was making money I'd never seen in my entire life. Then he met Brielle Hartman, old money, polished, careful. Her mother, Nadine, looked at me like I smelled like my old factory locker. Nathan didn't seem to notice. He just looked at Brielle like she was proof he'd made it out. When he invited me in, I thought it meant I still mattered. After retirement, My pension was enough for groceries and rent, and not much else. I lived quietly in Cleveland, doing little jobs for neighbors when my joints allowed. I didn't complain. I told myself a simple life was fine because the important thing, Nathan's success, was secure. Then one autumn evening, Nathan called. "Dad," he said, voice warm, softer than it had been in years. "Move in with us. We have space. You've worked hard enough. Let me take care of you for once." I hesitated because pride is the last thing poor men own. "Nate, I don't want to be a burden." He sounded almost offended. "You're my father. You raised me. You could never be a burden. Please." That word please hit me like a memory, like the boy he used to be. So I packed my life into 2 suitcases and drove to Lake Forest with a hopeful ache in my chest. Maybe we could finally be father and son again. Maybe the years of distance were just life pulling us in different directions. Nathan opened the mansion doors like he was unveiling a dream. The chandelier over the foyer looked like it belonged in a hotel. "This is your home now," he said. I believed him. For a week. Then the truth started showing itself in quiet ways. Not with shouting, with placement, with tone, with the slow turning of a father into something useful instead of someone loved. The first warning sign was how far away they put my room. Nathan walked me upstairs past guest rooms with private bathrooms, past a home gym, past spaces that existed just because they could. My room sat at the end of a long hallway beside the laundry room, small, plain, forgettable. "Perfect for you, Dad," he said. Quiet, close to everything. Close to everything, except them. The next morning I came downstairs early. Old habits. Brielle stood in the kitchen dressed like she had somewhere important to be. "Morning," I said. She didn't smile. "You're up early." "I can make breakfast," I offered. "If you're already up," she said, eyes on her phone. That became the pattern. Notes appeared on counters like commands. Caleb wiped down the fridge. Fingerprints. Caleb, garden needs weeding. Caleb, faucet dripping. Nadine visited 3 times a week, letting herself in with a key. "Since you're just sitting around," she'd say, "you can handle the dishes." I wasn't sitting around. I was constantly moving. I tried to talk to Nathan, but every time it was, "Not now, Dad. Big week. Later." Later never came. Before we continue, do me a favor, comment where you're watching from and what time it is. It reminds me I'm not telling this to an empty room. I didn't mind work until I realized I wasn't family anymore. By month 2, I wasn't living in that mansion. I was maintaining it. Breakfast became expected. Dinners became my responsibility when Brielle had meetings. I fixed leaky faucets, replaced light fixtures, trimmed hedges, carried packages, and cleaned up after guests who never looked at me long enough to learn my name. One afternoon, a neighbor asked Brielle, "Is he your handyman?" Brielle smiled politely. "That's Nathan's dad, not my father-in-law, not Mr. Mercer. Just Nathan's dad, like I was a detail in a biography." Nadine was worse. I heard her tell Brielle once, loud enough for me to catch. "At least this one earns his keep. Some elderly parents just sit." My face burned, but I stayed quiet. Where would I go? My pension wouldn't cover rent in a decent area, and I kept thinking Nathan would notice. Nathan would remember. I tried again. "Son, I feel like I'm working here." He sighed like I was a child complaining. "Brielle likes things a certain way. Don't take it personally." How else was I supposed to take it? The worst part wasn't the chores. I'd worked my whole life. The worst part was becoming invisible in the same house where my son lived like I was fading while still breathing. Then November came, and Nathan finally looked at me again. Not with love, with need. My son remembered I existed when he needed a perfect night. Nathan found me in the garage with excitement in his voice I hadn't heard in months. "Dad," he said, "my birthday's coming up. I'm throwing something big. Investors, people who matter. I need everything perfect." He looked at me like he was 8 again, asking for help with a broken bike chain. "Can you make sure the party runs smooth?" he asked. "It's crucial for my career." Something lifted in my chest. A chance to matter again. "Of course," I said. "I'll make it perfect." 2 weeks later, he returned almost vibrating. "Miles Kensington is coming," he said. "He's a millionaire investor. If I land his deal, it's 50 million. This night has to be flawless." The name tugged at something in the back of my mind, but I couldn't place it. Nathan waved it off. You wouldn't know him. Different league entirely. Different league. Different world. Different father, too, apparently. But I nodded, because love makes fools out of men like me. I wanted my son to see me, really see me, as someone valuable, not just useful. I told myself this party could be the moment he remembered who I was. And because I still believed in the boy I raised, I decided to give everything one more time. I spent my savings like devotion could buy respect. I had about $15,000 saved 10 years of scraping pennies from my pension, telling myself it was for emergencies. My safety net. I spent it all. Custom cake from the best bakery, upscale caterers, decorations, flowers, rentals. I bought Nathan a watch he'd admired once, sleek, expensive, the kind of thing that looked like it belonged on a successful man's wrist. I pushed through pain that made my back lock up at night. I planned every detail, confirmed every delivery, cleaned until the house gleamed. Brielle didn't thank me. She just inspected. "Those napkins aren't the right shade," she said once. Like it mattered. I swallowed my pride and fixed it. The day of the party I woke at 5. By noon my feet were swollen. By evening my hands shook with fatigue. But when I looked around at 7, everything was perfect, like a magazine spread. The house glowed with soft lighting and polished surfaces. It looked like success. I stood in my best pressed shirt holding the watch box, waiting to be part of it. Guests arrived in waves, suits, dresses. Laughter, too polished to be real. Nathan greeted everyone like a politician. Brielle glided beside him, radiant. Nadine hovered like a queen. I waited for Nathan to introduce me. He never did. And then the requests began. A drink, a napkin, a plate cleared. I realized they didn't see me as family. They saw me as staff. I became the help at the party I paid for. A woman tapped my shoulder. "Excuse me," she said, smiling impatiently. "Could you get me a drink?" I stared at her. She already turned away, assuming I'd obey. Then another person handed me an empty glass. Another asked where the restroom was. Another waved me over like I was hired. I looked at Nathan across the room. He didn't notice. Or worse, he did notice, and chose not to correct it. I tried to give him the watch. "Son, happy birthday." Nathan barely glanced at it. "Not now, Dad. I'm greeting people." He waved me away like a nuisance. I felt something crack inside my chest. Not loud, quiet. Like a hairline fracture that grows. The cake I ordered sat perfect on its stand. The appetizers disappeared. People praised the party, Nathan's party, like Nathan had done it all. And I moved through the crowd collecting plates, invisible and humiliated in the middle of my own sacrifice. By 8:30, I escaped to the kitchen and started washing dishes, even though there were staff for that. At least dishes didn't pretend I wasn't human. Then I heard heels. Nadine stood in the doorway, and I knew whatever she came to say would hurt. Nadine didn't whisper cruelty. She delivered a verdict. "Caleb, dear," Nadine said, voice sweet like fake syrup. "We need to talk." I kept my hands in the soapy water. "About what?" She crossed slowly, pearls glinting. "Do you understand how you look tonight?" I turned slightly. Like myself. She smiled, like that was the issue. "Exactly! You're embarrassing, Nathan." My stomach tightened. "I'm his father. You were useful when he was a child," she said, studying her nails. "Now he has a wife, a life, real connections. People who matter." Each word hit like hail. "Miles Kensington is here," she continued. "This is a $50 million opportunity. Nathan's future. And you're wandering around like you belong." My throat tightened. I do belong. I built his life with my hands. Nadine's smile vanished. "You built his past. He's trying to live in the future. And you're the awkward reminder of where he came from." Then she leaned in, voice low and sharp. "You're a burden. If you truly care about him, you'll stay in the kitchen and let the real people celebrate." She walked out, perfume and poison trailing behind her. I stood trembling, gripping a wet plate until my knuckles burned. The worst part wasn't her cruelty. It was realizing she'd said out loud what Nathan had been refusing to say to my face. Something inside me snapped. No more later. No more quiet suffering. If my son believed I was a burden, he would say it to me. So I dried my hands, and I walked back into the party. I confronted him because silence was killing me faster than the rain ever could. The living room throbbed with music and laughter. Nathan stood near the gift table with Brielle, surrounded by admirers. Nadine watched from the side like a queen. I walked straight through the crowd. People didn't move because they didn't notice me. I wasn't a guest. I was furniture that walked. "Nathan," I said. He looked up, annoyance flashing. "Not now, Dad. I need to talk to you." His smile tightened. "You're making a scene." "There's never a time," I said, voice rising. "When am I important enough for you?" Conversations faltered. Faces turned. Nathan's cheeks reddened. "Dad, stop," he hissed. "I spent my life giving you everything," I said. "I worked until my hands cracked. I sold Mom's house so you could go to college. And in your home, I'm treated like I'm nothing." Brielle's eyes narrowed with disgust, like I'd spilled something on her carpet. Nathan's eyes went cold. "When did it happen?" I asked, voice shaking. "When did I stop being your father and become your burden?" The silence was crushing. Then Nathan grabbed my arm hard enough to hurt. "You're ruining everything," he whispered. And he dragged me toward the front door like I was trash he needed removed before it embarrassed him further. Guests stepped aside. No one intervened. And in that moment I realized they didn't see a father being hurt. They saw a problem being handled. He locked the door like he was locking away his past. Nathan flung the front door open. Cold wind and rain slammed into my face. "You humiliated me," he snapped, voice trembling. "In front of Miles. In front of everyone. Nate, please." I tried. "You've always been like this," he said, eyes hard. "Needy. Always making everything about you." "Needy?" I whispered. "I've asked for nothing. I gave you a place to stay," he said. "And you repay me by risking my future." Then he said the words that shattered what was left of me. "You were always a burden, Dad. I succeeded in spite of you, not because of you. Get out." He shoved me backward. I slipped on the wet porch. The door slammed. The lock clicked. For a moment I stood frozen, not from cold, but from disbelief. My own son had thrown me out like I meant nothing. I pounded the door. "Nathan!" No answer. My phone was dead. My wallet and keys were inside. I had nothing. Inside, the music started again. Through the window, I saw them roll out the cake I paid for. Everyone cheered like I'd never existed. My hands went numb. My chest tightened. I slid down into the mud, and the storm swallowed my sobs. I didn't know how long I sat there. Then headlights cut through the rain. The headlights looked like a hallucination until the car stopped. A sleek black Audi rolled up and stopped near the curb, tires hissing on wet pavement. The passenger door opened. A man stepped out tall, mid-40s, wearing a coat that probably cost more than my savings. He didn't open an umbrella. He just stared at me like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Then he ran. He splashed through puddles and dropped into a crouch in front of me, rain soaking his expensive shoulders. "No," he whispered. "No, no." He stared at my face like it mattered. "Mr. Mercer," he said. I blinked. "Do I know you?" "It's me," he said, voice rough. "Miles. Miles Kensington." Memory hit like lightning. A skinny kid at my plant decades ago, working 3 jobs while studying at community college. Eyes full of exhaustion and determination. I remembered him telling me he'd been accepted to a university program and couldn't afford it. I remembered my reckless decision borrowing money I didn't have to give him $60,000 because I saw a future in him. Now he was kneeling in the mud in front of me. "What are you doing out here?" he demanded. Anger sharp but not aimed at me. My teeth chattered too hard to answer. He hooked an arm under mine. "Come on, get up." I tried, but my legs felt like they belonged to someone else. Miles looked over his shoulder. "Open the door," he snapped to his driver. In seconds, warm air poured out of the car like mercy. Miles half carried me inside, and I realized I'd been closer to disappearing than I wanted to admit. In the warmth of that car, his anger became my shield. The heater blasted hot air against my skin. My body shook harder, not from cold now, but from the shock of warmth returning. Miles climbed in beside me, pulled off his coat, and wrapped it around my shoulders like he was trying to cover more than rain. He pointed at the mansion through the window. "Whose house is that?" "My son's," I whispered. Miles went still. "Your son threw you out." I lowered my eyes. Silence was confirmation. His jaw tightened. And tonight he was trying to impress me. I didn't answer because it was true. Miles exhaled once, like his patience snapped. "Does he know who you are to me?" I shook my head. "Good," he said. He typed quickly on his phone. Outside, 2 black SUVs arrived, tires hissing. Men in dark suits stepped out with calm efficiency. Miles opened the car door. Cold rushed in. "Stay here," he told me. "You're safe now." Then he looked at the mansion like it had personally offended him. And he said 5 words, low and deadly. "I will destroy them all." He walked into the rain. From the back seat, I watched him stride to the front door. He didn't knock. He opened it and walked inside like he owned the air. The music stopped. Even from outside, I could feel the shift. The party turned into a courtroom the second he spoke my name. Through rain-streaked glass, I saw Nathan step forward with his best charm, smiling wide, posture perfect. Miles raised a hand. Nathan stopped mid-sentence. Miles spoke calmly. Brielle moved closer to Nathan, confused. Nadine stiffened. Miles gestured toward the window toward me. Nathan's face drained of color. Brielle's hand flew to her mouth. Nadine's lips parted, suddenly silent. Miles told them the truth. Decades ago he'd been poor, working multiple jobs, no future. One man changed his life by risking everything to help him. "That man," Miles said, voice carrying, "is Caleb Mercer." Gasps rippled. Then Miles delivered the sentence that cracked the room in half. 20 minutes ago, Nathan Mercer threw his father into a thunderstorm because he was embarrassed. Nathan stammered. "There's been a misunderstanding." Miles cut him off. "Would any of you trust a man who treats his father like trash?" And like dominoes, people started leaving. No handshakes, no smiles, just silence and doors. Miles pulled out his phone and made a call. On speaker, loud enough for the room, Nathan was terminated immediately. Nathan staggered back like he'd been hit. Miles continued he'd bought the mortgage. Foreclosure began tomorrow. 30 days to vacate. Nathan's knees buckled. I watched it all from the car and felt nothing like victory. Only a hollow grief that my child had become someone I didn't recognize. Before we go on, do me a favor, comment where you're watching from and what time it is. And if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, tell me. I'm listening. Miles didn't punish him with fists, he punished him with consequences. Security moved through the mansion quietly, gathering Nathan's laptop, awards, expensive bottles, gift bags. Not violent, just final. Nathan lunged once, desperate. A guard stepped in front of him without touching him, and Nathan froze. He didn't know how to fight consequences. He'd only learned how to negotiate. Brielle's face changed in real time, like she was already calculating how to save herself. Nadine clutched her pearls like they could protect her from reality. Miles remained calm, almost sad. "You have 1 hour to pack what you can carry," he told Nathan. "Then the locks change." Nathan whispered, voice small. "Where am I supposed to go?" Miles didn't blink. "I don't care. You didn't care where your father would go." Nathan sank to his knees in the doorway. The mansion behind him looked bright but suddenly empty like a stage after the audience leaves. Miles turned to go. Then he looked back, voice lowering. "If you ever contact Caleb again without his permission, I will destroy whatever you rebuild." Nathan couldn't speak. Miles walked back into the rain. He slid into the car beside me, soaked, exhausted. Not proud, not smiling, just finished. "It's done," he said quietly. I stared at the mansion fading behind us as we drove away, and I realized something terrible. No amount of punishment could rewind time. No amount of money could buy back respect. And no storm was as cold as the moment a son chooses status over love. He didn't save me by taking revenge, he saved me by refusing to let me die unseen. Miles took me to his penthouse in Chicago, 40-something floors above the lake. The city lights looked like scattered coins. A doctor was waiting. Mild hypothermia, exhaustion, dehydration. They warmed me slowly, gave me dry clothes, soup I couldn't taste. I fell asleep like my body had been holding its breath for years, and finally let go. I slept 16 hours. When I woke, I smelled coffee. Miles sat at a long table with eggs and toast, like he was trying to rebuild normality for me, one simple thing at a time. "You gave me a future," he said quietly. "Now I'm giving you one back." I looked down at my hands, calloused, cracked, older than they should be. "I don't want charity." Miles shook his head. "Not charity. I need your help." I almost laughed. "Miles, I'm 62 and broken." He leaned forward, eyes steady. You're 62 and wise. There's a difference. He told me about his foundation grants, mentorships, programs for people who needed a shot. I can teach business, he said. I can't teach grit. You know character. You know struggle. You know what it means to keep going. I wanted to say no. I wanted to hide in grief. But something in me, maybe pride, maybe stubbornness, wanted to prove Nathan wrong. Wanted to prove I wasn't a burden. So I nodded. And in that nod, my life shifted from being someone's leftover to becoming something new. Healing wasn't a miracle. It was slow, ugly work. The first month was brutal. I stayed in the guest room, replaying Nathan's words, until they bruised my thoughts. A therapist came twice a week. She told me I was grieving twice. My son and the son I believed he was. That hurt more than the storm. Miles never pushed. He left breakfast outside my door. Checked in once a day, brief and respectful. He understood dignity because he'd once had none. One morning, I left the penthouse and walked into a downtown coffee shop just to feel ordinary. At the next table, a young father whispered to his friend, voice shaking, "My kid won't talk to me since the divorce. I don't know how to fix it." Something inside me leaned forward. "Mind if I sit?" I asked. His name was Marcus. For 20 minutes, I told him what I'd learned too late. Kids don't need perfect. They need present. Pride kills relationships faster than anger. Apologies without excuses are stronger than any speech. When I stood, Marcus shook my hand. "Thank you," he said. I needed that. Outside, cold wind hit my face, and I realized helping him helped me. I still had value. Not because of what people could take from me, but because of what I could choose to give. 2 weeks later, Miles asked me to start reviewing grant applications with him. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving. I was building. I stopped living for approval and started living for purpose. Miles's mentorship division needed someone to interview applicants, young people asking for funding, a chance, a way out. I didn't read resumes like paperwork. I read them like lives. I looked for accountability, for resilience, for the fire that survives failure. We funded 5, then 10, then 20. Months passed. The ache in my chest didn't vanish, but it changed shape. It became less like a wound and more like a reminder. Don't disappear again. One evening, after interviewing a father who'd lost custody and was trying to get clean, I went to Miles. "I want to start something," I said. Miles looked up. "What kind of something?" "A program," I said. "For fathers, men who feel invisible, men who sacrificed until they became empty, men who still want to be better." Miles didn't hesitate. "What will you call it?" I thought of the storm, of the locked door, of the moment I nearly vanished. "Second chances," I said. Miles smiled. "Then let's build it." He wrote the first check, $500,000, like it was nothing. We rented a modest office in the West Loop. Warm lighting, simple chairs, no judgment. The first meeting, 15 fathers showed up broken, angry, scared. I told them the truth. Sacrifice without boundaries teaches people to exploit love. Love isn't permission to erase you. By December, we helped 50 fathers. By 18 months, over 100. And while I was rebuilding other men, my son was finally facing himself. Forgiveness wasn't a gift. It was a road paved with proof. Nathan's first letter came in February. He lived in a cheap studio apartment. He delivered food for long shifts. He wrote, "Dad, I understand the cold now. I deserve this." I cried. I didn't reply. More letters came. He wrote about Brielle leaving when money vanished, about Nadine disappearing when consequences arrived, about loneliness that felt like punishment. Then he wrote something different. I started volunteering at a free clinic. He described helping an elderly man whose son abandoned him. He wrote, "I was that son." He broke down in a bathroom because he finally saw himself. He started therapy. He sent proof hours, journals, volunteer records, not fancy words, actions. 2 years after the storm, my phone rang. His voice sounded smaller. "Dad, can we meet?" I looked around my office walls, covered in photos, fathers reunited with kids. Proof broken things can heal, but only with consistency. "Okay," I said. "Here, Saturday, 10 a.m. When Nathan walked in, he looked thinner, humbler. A woman held his hand. Elena, a nurse with kind eyes. She told me she met him at his lowest and loved the man who showed up for people nobody saw. Nathan slid a folder toward me. I'm not asking to be your son again, he whispered. I just want a chance to earn something back. I stared at him a long time. Then I said, we start with family therapy. And time. A lot of time. Nathan nodded, tears falling. I'll wait, he said. However long. Years later, he called again. Dad, you have a granddaughter. When I held that tiny hand in the hospital, something inside me softened, not because the past disappeared, but because the future finally had a chance. Miles didn't save me by destroying Nathan's life. He saved me by reminding me I was worth saving and by forcing my son to face consequences he couldn't buy his way out of. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this story. If it moved you, if it made you think, or if it reminded you of someone you care about, please take a moment to tap the like button. It truly helps this channel reach others who may need to hear stories like this. And if you enjoy real-life stories about family, betrayal, and finding strength after loss, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next one. New stories are coming, and each one has something important to say. Most of all, thank you for listening. You're not just watching a video, you're sharing this moment with me, and that means more than you know.